Today we will have an introduction about the project, and our project coordinator will tell you more about this project purpose and what we do. After which we will have a short impact assessment survey where you will answer a few questions related to your relationship and engagement with robotics. And finally, we will have our speakers who are experts in different parts of communication and area of robotics and inspection and maintenance. So right now I will move on to the next slide, which is presenting the three of our keynote speakers today. Marta Palau-Franco, who is a project officer at EU Robotics. Marta is also engaged in RI4EU. Juan Antonio Pavon Losada is a project manager assistant at Prisma Lab and University of Naples, and he's also engaged in RIMA project. And Carlos Matilla Codesal is a CEO and co-founder of Fubex, and he will give a bit more an interesting perspective from the SME side in the topic of drones. But I will tell you a little bit more about each of our speakers before their presentations. This is just a short overview. And before I give the words to our project coordinator, I would like to share with you a little bit on how to use this platform. If you haven't used the Butter platform before, you are going to be able to have different kinds of reactions on the left side. So you can have different reactions, agree, disagree, and also there is a soundboard. You can also use some of the sounds as well. What's also important to note is that below the react button, there is a button which you can use if you would like to have a comment and a question. So we're able to turn the mic on and hear your question. But if you're more comfortable or have something to add and ask a question, you can still also use our chat, because we will also review the chat during the presentations and also at the end. And just a little bit about this group here. We have representatives and participants from 21 different countries. And also the majority of you represent the scientific community, with 1/4 of the representatives from the industry. However, we also have some people from the policy makers area and also general public. So without further ado, I would like to give an introduction to Annelie, who is our coordinator, and she will tell you a little bit more about the project. Annelie.
Hello, everyone. Very nice to be here at the workshop. So, Natasha, just a technical question. Yes, thank you. No more questions. Here comes my presentation. So, very welcome to the workshop where we are aiming to discuss more about robotics, and specifically about inspection and maintenance robotics, and how we can do better in communicating innovation and robotics specifically. I am Anneli Rose, the coordinator of Robotics for EU project, and this project is dealing with non-technological aspects of robots. So if we speak about developing a technology or robot, then of course we probably are capable of programming quite many things. But it is getting more and more important that we also consider the societal impact of technologies, because On the one hand, the technologies and also robotics technologies are giving a lot of benefits to the society, and also they contribute to large extent to the economic growth. But at the same time, we also have to consider the societal impact which they might have, and also whether the society can accept all the new technologies which is developing that rapidly. Therefore, we identified the current issues which are the most pressing in robotics, and these are the following. But Natasha, sorry, still, can you see my slides? Okay, because for me, for some reasons, it doesn't work as well. So actually, I don't see myself what is there on this slide. But nevertheless, you can see here the main topics which we identified based on the literature. And interesting enough that one of those topics is also education and engagement. So, and I think that this is actually closely related to the topic of our workshop today. And it is evident that the people around us, the professional users of different technologies, and also regular people who perhaps are not using robots every day and are not using all those technologies every day, they should be also aware that what are these developments and how can they be engaged to this technology development process. So this is what we call responsible robotics. What it is considering the societal impact and non-technological aspects of robotics in the research or development process. And we are trying to apply the principles of responsible research and innovation also in our project work, which means that we asked more than 1,000 people that what do they think and what are the main concerns. Additionally to that survey, which you can see here on this slide, we also had another survey where we asked more than 700 citizens across Europe and beyond that what are the main concerns and thoughts if they think about robots and emerging technologies. And here are the results. So if we speak about the inspection and maintenance robots and actually about robotics in general, then during both surveys, by far, the main fear was the fear of technological unemployment. Of course, if we speak about inspection and maintenance robots specifically, I think also we here in the audience today agree that safety and security are very important and one of the main concerns. And what people expect is that all those issues will be proactively also addressed. And for example, our citizen survey really showed that 85% of all respondents think that we should engage the users to the development process of technologies. So that actually a user is the expert in this context as well. And of course, everything that is related to artificial intelligence is also one of those concerns. So that how do we communicate to the professional or professional end users or to citizens if on the one hand, we would like to make sure that robots are more widely accepted in the society and that they are acknowledged, but how do we communicate if we also know that there are some concerns? Importantly, as we also interviewed policymakers, there was a common agreement that also policymakers should know more about the solutions which are there, and there should be strengthened communication. And although we all acknowledge that, yes, indeed, if you say so, then this should be strengthened. But the key question is that how to do it, right? That what is this correct mechanism to make sure that that the robotics community has outreach also to the policymakers, and we can define it, of course, broadly. So these can be decision makers at national level, at universities, in the parliaments, but of course also in the European Commission, so that the options are broad, but the question is how to make this real collaboration and exchange of information happen. Also, if you speak about the legislation, that how to make sure that that the technology that is developing that rapidly can keep up with the legislative process, which is way slower. I'm sure that you have experienced it, at least I have, because I also worked for the government for 9 years here in Estonia. So probably the different speed is one of the questions. So, but what are the conclusions? The community thinks that the cooperation should be improved. So it also obviously means that the communication should be improved, and we should consider the impact of robots and the societal impact, and how the society could be engaged to the technology development process to ensure that the positive impacts are outweighing the negative impacts which some technologies also might have. So awareness and communication definitely are important topics, and this is why I'm really grateful that we are having this discussion here today. If you happen to have a robot or an idea which you would like to validate together with citizens, then we are offering also this opportunity. We would be happy to work together with all of you, and you can contact either us or our colleagues from Danish Board of Technology, who are organizing consultations between companies and citizens, so that we are aiming to put our words into practice. And also we are organizing an exhibition, a virtual exhibition with virtual reality technology included to promote different robotic solutions. But this is not everything what we offer. We also are developing a responsible robotics maturity assessment model as a tool for the developers and also researchers to understand whether all the non-technological aspects have been considered. And of course, we are aware that there are different initiatives on this landscape, but nevertheless, this is also an interesting process which we are leading here in the project, and would be happy to collaborate with you in this as well. So thank you very much, and looking forward to our discussions during the next few hours.
Thank you. Thank you, Anneli. Now I would like to point you to the chat, where I believe my colleague has sent you the YouTube link to the short presentation about the maturity assessment tool. So feel free to see it on your own time. And if you have any questions related to it, feel free to let us know. I think the next part of our program is a short assessment survey. So I would like to thank Anneli for joining us and for presenting. And now we're moving to the next part. So let's now launch the survey. Here we will have a few questions. First, feel free to vote. I interact with robots in my home, work, or personal environment. So you may not know that you interact with them, or you fully understand and interact. So let's give a few minutes or a few moments to our audience to answer this question. From what I see, as the results are moving, as you're voting, most of you do interact. There are a few of you who fully agree, some agree, and we have one, a few actually who don't. Let's give a few more moments, and we could close this question and move to the next one. Most of you agree. Okay. The next question is, what are, in your opinion, the main issues regarding the educational and engagement processes in the adoption of robotic solution in inspection and maintenance? And just to give a few notes, inspection and maintenance robotics relates to, and I'm sure our speakers will tell you a bit more, but to solutions such as drones. So maybe you can think if there's something regarding information or educational parts about this topic, you can also write it in. We have a few answers already, and if you feel like you agree or disagree, you can also vote. We have lack of success stories. I did not understand the question. This is also a valid point, so we can come back to it during the workshop as well. Price, fear, not useful tools, not enough communication to the public about these solutions and their impact on society, privacy concerns regarding data. Yeah, so these are the topics which have not been, according to your answers, and maybe could be better communicated. Integration complexity. Sector still mostly seen as a masculine environment. Yes, we did have also a gender kind of discussion around this topic in this area especially. So something that maybe we can have Marta tell us a little bit about this as our female speaker in the topic as well. But okay, I think we can close this question and move on to the next one. I believe that non-technological aspects of robotics are discussed sufficiently in the public discourse. And this is something which maybe we can revert back to Anneli's presentation, whether you feel like those issues she was discussing are actually discussed enough in the public discourse. So do you feel like you have known about some of them? For example, this data protection, or some of them you have known less about. So this is just to try to measure this range of information which you have received about different topics which we have discussed. And sometimes these are challenging to measure. So I see that we have one I don't know answer, and I think it's quite also valid to discuss. And here I see most participants disagree. So good that at least with this workshop, we may try to discover why or how can some of these aspects be discussed in a more efficient way, more successful way, or maybe just to discuss which topics should be addressed to the public more. Okay, I think that we can also wait a few more moments and then close this question and move on to the next one. But definitely this is something which I would also would like to go back to our speakers and ask them why or how can this be improved, where even in this small group, most of you disagree that these issues were discussed enough. Okay, and then we have also the final question of the impact assessment survey is, what are your expectations from this workshop? What do you expect to learn or find out or connect with colleagues in the field? We had in the previous workshops a case where we unintentionally somehow started to build this community of inspection and maintenance experts across Europe because we were able to reach out and connect, and this is something which was a positive side effect of these events which we were organizing. So definitely something which I hope we will also do here. Inspiration for project communication, great. Tips on how to better communicate in order for citizens to feel assured. And this is precisely what we discussed with also Annelie's presentation, this area of engagement with the public. Examples of successful communication campaigns. I think we have one speaker precisely talking about this, so this is great. Guidance how to proceed with communication and dissemination activities within the domain, how to have better impact on society with robotics. Great. Yes, I think these are all lovely comments, and I hope that we addressed, if not all of them, then at least most of them or some of them, because we have limited time, but hopefully we'll be able to touch upon these topics. Okay, so then let's maybe wait a few more moments, and then we can close. We can close this survey. Okay, so now I would like to tell you a few words about our first speaker, Marta Palau-Franco, who is a project officer at EU Robotics. Marta is an electronics engineer, oceanographer, and project officer at EU Robotics, where she works on projects on digital innovation. Marta was previously a project manager of EU-funded projects on robotics competitions and a member of the Science Communication Unit at the University of the West of England, Bristol, and the Bristol Robotics Lab. She's a STEM ambassador and a contributor to the well-known robotics portal, robohub.org. And Marta, in her presentation today, will talk about different audiences for innovation communication and how social context and perception can affect the way we communicate innovative technologies. So without further ado, I give the floor to Marta.
Can you see the presentation? No? Okay. And yes. Can you hear me well? Because they just decided to start again the construction works outside. So I don't know if can you listen like a noise or it's fine? It's okay?
We hear you.
Like, yes. Then I start. Thank you, Natasha. So I'm going to talk today about the importance of context and perception when we communicate innovation. Okay, it just takes a little bit to charge the slides. Okay, sorry. Can you see the slide or it's just... Okay, you can see it, but I cannot. Okay, anyway, then I will just keep talking a little bit.
There's something with the second slide because I wasn't able to see my second slide, but then I was able to see the rest of them. So maybe this is just
maybe it's the first one. Okay, I remember where it's there, so I will talk. So well, in our we are in a digital age, in which we are. It's important for us to communicate because. The pace of change accelerates now exponentially, and technology becomes more complex, and it changes really a lot over time. And it's important we have this power of communication and what we call like two-way communication. So it needs to be reciprocal. And to better like be able to innovate and make this innovation good for our lives. So as you see in the picture, you will see like we have a source and receivers and how we communicate our message channels, and we expect to receive some feedback. But there are two other things that that represented. It is the perception and the context, and that is what I'm going to talk about here. So what does context mean in communication? You know, well, it refers to the way we communicate. The communication is given meaning, and it's essential that for being a good communicator, that you know how to interact in this context. So the context, the type of context we can have, it can be physical, temporal, cultural, socio-psychological. So physical would be like, okay, I'm using this butter platform here, I'm using an image, and also would be like, oh, the noise of the construction work, I also need to take it into account. That's how I put my headphones. So that is one context. If I want the message to arrive you well, then the temporal one, if, for example, you think like presentations are normally very serious, if you see the image next to my text, you would say, well, if you are not so get used, you may be a little bit shocked. Why is she bringing here some kind of meme here? Or then if we go back now to the meme, there is a context in which for you to understand. So if I put this image, what I'm expecting for you is when you read it, you laugh at the end. So if you are not laughing, it's because I lost or I understood that you had a context, which is not the real one. So it may be that you either don't understand what a meme is, so maybe it's a case of age, you know, or you are not so get used to social networks. You may not get who are the two dogs there. So then it's very specific of also cultural of memes and what is going around that. You may not know what it's a robot, you know, so then maybe assuming that you know about technology that you know, so that would be like a cultural. And also you are required to have a little bit to understand the full thing. You have required to have a minimum level of knowledge of robotics, which then if you don't get it, it's maybe because also I made a mistake choosing it for this context, and because you don't have a social background, you don't have a level of, let's say, sometimes education or knowledge on the topic. And of course, it's a joke. So humor, it's also very cultural. And if you go into this more smart humor, you also need to take into account that the people need to have that level. And you can also have a context in which is completely psychological. You know, somebody that may have a bad day or it's thinking about other things will not even get the meaning. And that it's what is important for us to know in which context we are going to communicate our message, because that will facilitate we reach and we have like a more healthy communication. And that brings me to the next part, which is perception. So in the meme, the main thing, it was like robots are not self-conscious, but it can be people that think that nowadays you have conversation in the street and they may think, yeah, the robots are self-conscious. They know about themselves, you know. You may think that your Roomba is plotting with your cat about how to take over the world. So, and that is your perception. That is your reality. That doesn't mean it's true. And that's why here is the concept of perception in communication. So we understand perception as something it's how something is regarded, understood, interpreted. And of course, each person, we have different ways to categorize that information. No? We all had past experiences, we had past perceptions bring from our cultural background, even our language. And all that sometimes creates what we call perception barriers. which are no more than internal bias about people or events that have around us. And these perception barriers, they can really disrupt effective communication. The communication may not be that healthy. You know, if you think robots will tomorrow will take over the world, and I'm trying to and I'm talking to you, I will not talk in the same way. I'm going to try to convince you, put in some more facts, that, and it will be a very more heavy conversation that if it was somebody that already accepts, let's say, what I'm going to do. So what I'm going to say. So the good thing is that someone's perception of something can change over time. You know, it's not always there. And we can change someone's perception of future expectation about this, let's say in this case, a technology, by changing the current reference or their interpretation of the prior reference. That's why it's important for us to know what is their perception of what we are talking about, because then we can influence. So as an example, I work, I'm sorry, I pressed the wrong button. I work, as Natasha mentioned, with emergency response robot for nuclear disaster. And it brings me, like, that was in, so let's put ourselves in context. So it was 2013. There were Syria war, PRISM, you know, in the news, it was all about like negative things. And there was some word that was thrown. So we were working with aerial robots. And we had to be very careful to use in any press release the word drone. So we normally prefer to use UAV in that time, which now it's different because also there is now a human aerial vehicle. Now there is a gender thing. So it's shifting into another word. But in that time, the word drone and drones itself were perceived by citizens, by media, as something bad. Also because it was a technology also very used in military. And every time you would say drone, people would click automatically. Okay, this surveillance, bombing. If you see like strikes, attack, the pictures, and we had to deal with that, you know, because it was a civilian rescue, and we had to deal with that perception of the technology too. The good thing is that perception has been changing. With the years, as there are more drones have been more used in other fields, like in this case, for example, inspection and maintenance. You can see there like a drone flying in a place that, you know, it's very difficult for a worker to reach. In entertainment, so we have now art with drones, you know, flying lights, and you may have given one for a present to one of your kids, or buy it for yourself to film, you know. Or they have been used also now more in agriculture. So if you Google now drone word, the news are more positive, you know, the pictures are more positive. But this is also because we have been communicating from different sides about this technology. So communicating what the technology does, how it works, and also having these, you know, outreach activities, STEM activity when I have been with robots, that helps to people to be more approachable and understand better how is the reality of that technology and how, you know, it changed their perception. But of course, if we go back to context, if I now say drone in 2013 to a, let's say, 25 years old person, what will come to their mind would be different if I say the same thing today to a 25 years old. So that's why knowing the perception in the past of your technology and what is now, it will be important for you to engage with your audience. It will always help you. So then we have another trick you can do in marketing, which perception of innovation. There is a quote of Marisa King, it's a professor in behavior, organizational behavior. It say, if you know who is in and who is out in the scale of popularity, you can arrange to be seen with the in crowd, and there is a halo effect. that also happen for innovation. You know, if you are always communicating what you do and you are portrayed in media that is related to innovative technology and so on, at some point, if you are in the same page as some other company that has already had this innovative look, you may get a little bit of, you know, of that halo yourself. So you can find yourself in, if you see this a little bit like chart here, I have said like how you are perceived innovation and how you really are. So it's, let's say, the bad, the balanced, and the illusionist. So if you're doing innovation and you are communicating correctly, then, you know, they are perceived as innovative. Yeah, you're doing great work. If you are not innovative, but you are perceived as innovation because you are very good at communicating and marketing yourself, like, hey, well done, master, you know. But of course, be careful, because it will arrive to a point that you are risking the trust with, in the sense, your audience, because at some point, you know, people have expectations and we want to see that you are really innovative. If you're very good at communicating, you can keep that for mid-long term, because as we know, innovation can be very fast, but also sometimes, you know, from a prototype to what you take into the market, it will can happen like many years. So, but the big problem here is that, hey, I do innovation, but I'm not perceived as innovative. And here you have a problem, very clear problem of how you communicate. And then you need to review and improve your communication strategy, your plan, or maybe it's your implementation of it. And this is important. And this, as an example also of how this perception of innovation, if here there's a picture of the humanoid robot of like Tesla bot that we all know, Elon Musk. He puts this robot there and you say, okay, this is 2021, I will have these in 2022. If you know a little bit about humanoid robots, you will have a laugh and you will say, yeah, I want to see that. Hey, you have 6 months left to show me this. Let's see. You can also play and beautify, because then if you read the article, you may say, okay, well, he'll say he will have prototype. It doesn't say what is the tear-out there of the robot. So, okay, well, but it's all these hints, but also he can do it because he has been innovative in other fields. So by association, we will associate he also will be innovative in this one. And if you talk with a person, because I put this because I was talking, you know, the other day with a person, and they really like, not roboticists, they really thought that was possible because he had been doing other things. So that is the level of power of that perception. So going now to the end, because I think I lost a little bit track of time, what you need to take into account with all this, with the content and perception, always be aware of your communication context. That will make your life easier. Also try to know what is people's perception of your company and the technology you are offering. And if you realize it's negative or not what you want, try to change it. There are communication things that you can do to change it, as we have explained. Communicate strategically at different stages of the technology development. So it's good that you, from time to time, communicate. If you are a long period of time in silence, you know, there's time for other people to fill that gap there. And it may then affect how you are perceived. Then, of course, be flexible and adapt your communication strategy when necessary. You know, context change, things change, and you need to react accordingly. Listen to feedback of your audience, you know, and value other people's perspective. The surveys, you know, burst a little bit your own bubble, because we also have a perception of ourselves, and we need that external income. Then, if you are a small company, you have not a lot of experience with communication, look for professional advice. You know, it's there, you can hire a consultant at some point, you can be trained, or hire a person for you. Like, it's, take it seriously. Like sometimes, especially if your company depends on this. There's companies on the top list, they spend a lot of money on communications. And almost the last thing is, by communication, your innovative technology, it doesn't matter how you do it, but when only by communicating, you are changing the social and cultural context, and you can contribute to make it easier, but also safer for the adoption of technology for the rest of us. You have the case of what I put of drones. There was a lot of also changes in regulation and the perception, drones falling on crowds that make pressure on putting some regulation and some laws. So we are all happy. It's a better, adoption of technology. And failure is part of the learning process. So don't be afraid, just communicate, and communicate. So I leave it here, and for more details, like my colleagues like Juan and Carlos will explain you and enter in more like the detail part of how you can communicate. Thank you very much.
Now I would like to introduce you to Juan Antonio Pavan Losada. Juan is a project manager assistant at Prisma Lab at University at Naples. So he is a project manager assistant and in the Department of Electrical Engineering and Information Technology at the University of Naples. So he also works on the internal and external design and management of European projects, communication and dissemination plans, including digital communication, event management, and media relations. And Juan will speak to you about how to build trust, reliability, and a good reputation in the domain of inspection and maintenance. So Juan, I give the floor to you.
Good morning, everyone. Well, thank you so much, Natasha, for the introduction. Well, my name is Juan. I work for CREATE, which is one of these bodies that exist within different universities. It's a consortium of electrical base departments, and well, we participate in many European projects. On my side, I work now for RIMA. I have previously worked in other projects as Site4MS, 5G Crocom, and many others. And well, I have like around 6-7 years of experience working on communicating European projects. Well, I will try to land all what Marta said in a much more practical side in the day-to-day activities, and well, more or less trying to show you good things and bad things that should not do, and how to actually land and proceed with activities in communication and dissemination work packages, so to say. In that sense, and going to the point, well, when we think about communicating inspection and maintenance, it's mostly in the following.
The approach has a little twitch in his game plan, but we've seen a lot, so we hope.
Okay, we got some noise on the background. So, well, mainly when something happens and we get a disaster with an accident, then we get a communication crisis, and everyone is running from one place to the other, and everyone is actually trying to well, save their lives, their jobs, and try to minimize damage. What is behind that? It's different symptoms of bad communication planification, which is intermittent visibility. People show up just from, let's say, from 6 months to the next 6 months, like say, hey, this is actually my robot, please pay attention to me. Some other people is not defining value propositions, and they are communicating general features and innovation, but they do not define what gives value to their activity, or they actually do not correctly dimension their activities. I mean, you have to be conscious that you have a robot which actually inspects roads. Well, this is what it is. Actually, we are not saving whales, so to say. So you have to find a way of strategic thinking on how to put this forward, and do not expect that people would be automatically interested as you are, or people actually just do the minimum activities just to get the 5/10 and keep moving. Then also other things that are behind, it's people communicate in a too technical way, which is not really engaging, or they are too plain and too direct, and it's actually not connecting to different audiences. Even though in a super fast-paced news day-to-day life, you have to connect your innovation to what is going on in the real world, and this doesn't happen. Also, moving to the following slide, this is how a good inspection and maintenance scheme looks. In the white boxes is every time in which communication takes place. I mean, from the very beginning, when decision makers identify and prioritize issues and give direction on where to go. In there, you have to communicate your priorities. So adoption of this measure is actually much more easier than if you do not communicate and you just implement it directly. Then the solutions need to be developed. We are there. In RIMA, we are there. We are trying to connect innovation with markets and with different audiences, so people is aware what is over there and people can use it. Then once the ones that decide pick up one solution, it's needed to report. On the one hand, for example, in public funded projects, one needs to think that the main client is the European Commission, which is the one who is giving you money and the one who needs to be satisfied with the work you have done. As soon as you satisfy the European Commission, then you can actually go to the market and find clients and so on. But in this scheme, that you have to define really well who is your client and who you need to report and who you need to communicate in order to keep your business sustainable, or to keep actually applying to other funding support, for example. Then again, so to say, if you don't implement any solution, then sooner or later you will have a bad result because the accident will end up coming. Then you will come back to the communication crisis. The following step is about getting results, and there are again two options. On the one hand, normally in the field of inspection and maintenance, good results are really noticed because everything works as they should keep working, namely airports, ports, electrical facilities, and so on. So to make it visible, well, you have to put an extra effort in order to communicate. Otherwise, people will not notice that they would work behind. If you get bad results, if you get an accident, if you get a problem issue whatsoever, then if you haven't communicated first, then you come to a crisis. This good scheme ends up with all target audiences reacting to the process and feeding up another iteration of this process. For example, citizens setting up or prioritizing issues for decision makers through elections or whatsoever. So this is actually the process that goes all over again. Well, then based on that, what we could say about communication is not about explaining things, actually to build relations with all different stakeholders, namely policymakers, citizens, developers, regional authorities that normally are the ones who actually implement these solutions, infrastructure, and so on. So, well, this scheme works for, as I said, everyone. Also, even this relationship building enhanced democracy. And on our side, for example, it helps us to take technologies closer to the market so they are available for everyone. As every relationship in the world, the key word is trust. I mean, if you don't build trust all over this process, then any issue that happens all over the process itself will be tending to fail. If you actually do it correctly, even though a worst case scenario happens, as it is an accident or a collapse or a breach or whatsoever, this trust will actually absorb the impact of the issue and you would be able to survive to this crisis and keep actually build this trust in order to well, get benefits, sell robots, implement robots, or keep being voted again. So that's why, I mean, this build of trust is actually key all over this process. In order to build that, well, this is a strategy that we follow in RIMA. There are 4 concepts that will be somehow self-explanatory, which is in the following slide, that are to be an engaged listener, to know what is going around, to learn the languages that are there. We will go into that in a bit later. How to express yourself, because again, it makes an effort to go there and to make yourself visible, and to actually make your message go through all different messages that are around in the ecosystem. Also, you have to reflect and make intentional language choices. It's not the same to say, and we will see later, use my robot or die, or make one of these super long 15 sentences explanation that actually no one reads. And then also, since we are working mostly in a digital domain since a few years ago, well, you have to work on the graphic dimension of all of it and to make it attractive. One by one, well, for being an engaged listener, you have to do it first of all to know the domain, to know what is there, what people is speaking about, to know who is actually speaking, to know who is leading and who is not, and what are the stakeholders that are actually more trustworthy and which are not. Actually, getting closer to each of them will actually somehow get you benefit from a sort of a spillover effect. Also, you have to know which channels are the right ones and which channels are not. For example, we have an issue in RIMA, which in the consortium agreement we got that we need to work through Facebook. This is not a real good B2B environment. The platform is not being used anymore. People is not there for knowing or to learning about robots. So, well, we have to discard it in the end and go for LinkedIn and Twitter, which are much more optimal channels. This will actually keep moving forward because, you know, all platforms change from time to time. You have to know that. Also, you have to adapt your communication strategy to the languages that other audiences are using. And I'm not speaking about idioms. I'm speaking about if you want to communicate to the European Commission, you need to know how they work and how they send and receive messages. Also, in a different way, for more market-based stakeholders, you need to know the different language because it's not the same to speak about commercial issues, about the policy issues. Also, to see what people does good and what people does wrongly, and well, repeat what is good and try to avoid the wrong things. And also to be able to go there, the sooner the better, because as soon as you incorporate communication and dissemination reflection all over your activity, the better, and you will be able to well, the sooner you will be able to start, and the communication strategy will be able to actually get filtered all over the process. Also, as I said previously, and it's a bit of a repetition, well, this helps to stay tuned, to be updated because it's really important to where people is moving, and well, know the latest trends on that. Once you know that, then you are ready to speak yourself. First of all, before going into the well the arena, the communication arena, define well your goals and valuable positions. They speak for themselves, and there is some communication behind the actual word. So the better you define these goals, the better you will be able to communicate, and more things you will be able to communicate behind just the plain words that you release outside. Then make the active effort of going there, be visible. Again, it doesn't matter if you have the best robot all over the world, the best drone, or the best application. If you don't go there and you tell things to people and you actually explain this and you actually, based on this explanations, you don't build relationship with everyone, then the application will be absolutely useless. Again, it's really important to be continuous. Something that we find many times in different innovation projects is that people post well, they actually tweet or they make a post in LinkedIn once each 2 months, 6 months, or whatsoever. This is actually not a good practice because, well, as in any relationship, you have to be there in a continuous way and actually be explaining different things. If you show up from once a year, your legitimacy is not that good. Trust will not be built. People will not really pay attention to that. So you should actually put some effort. For one tool we use in RIMA is just a simple content calendar in which we just calendarize the different activities, so we can embed there the different campaigns, and also don't need to be thinking on a day-to-day basis what to post. You put some effort there, then in a day-to-day basis you just go there, know what needs to be posted, and then just do it. That's actually, it's super simple, but helps a lot. Then again, don't I mean, you have to go beyond your horizons and break the bubbles you are in, because projects normally are very self-centered. So a way of breaking this is find collaboration activities or ways to collaborate with others, CSAs, different projects, and so on. So this way you can actually jump into each other ecosystem while you share your own ecosystem, and allowing well, communication even between different projects. This is very important because after some time, the projects, let's say, get satisfied with some minimum amount of connections, and this, I mean, and in a project length, it has to be growing until the end of the project. Also, well, things may not work at first, so please be patient and keep working, and also try new things. I mean, it is not, communication is not a science, regardless whatever people may say. It's more like an art, in a sense that, well, something that maybe didn't work yesterday will work tomorrow. So well, try new things and don't be afraid of making mistakes, because in the end you will learn good best practices and you will use it in the future. Once that's clear, then reflect on how you communicate. Here I have two examples that well, there are two exaggerations, but on the one hand, you have this super simple scheme that use my robot or the bridge will fall and you will die, or the plain technical explanation that actually no one really reads. You need to find a balance between those two. Well, always knowing that this actually, especially on maintenance, it's a technical domain, and you need to endorse your claims with evidence, but please don't forget that there is someone who needs to read it, and who is actually putting some of their time, so they expect something that they would at least interest them in a way. Again, it's not the same to speak about something in a newspaper than in a tweet, so please use different methods in LinkedIn or Twitter. You can actually connect with different tags and different topics and different stakeholders. Please use this sort of resources, because that's really useful in order to improve impressions and improve your results when it comes to social media. As I said, connect with different topics and stakeholders through this, you know, these ads, and I don't know the word in English, the almohadillas, so to say. And then, as I said before, take your content to the next level by connecting it to real world news, things that are currently happening, things that people is actually interested today on what's going on. That would actually help you a lot in order to improve, again, the results of your communication and dissemination campaign. Once again, mostly, I mean, 60–70% of the communication we do today is digital, and plain text doesn't work anymore. So, well, you need to put some extra effort in dressing all your messages with some colorful suits. Again, set goals, because they speak for themselves. They will actually speak about your organization, what you're looking for, or what you're actually aiming to, or whatsoever. This is super useful, and it's many times not really giving the value that it is that they have. Again, be visually attractive, work on it, find the ways or the trends that they are there in terms of, you know, the Pantone of the year or whatsoever. That actually helps. And people, well, get really softly attracted by this sort of activities. Also, check metrics and KPIs, because they will tell you what you are doing well and what you are not doing that well. Something, again, that is actually not really paid attention in projects is actually reporting. And we always remind reporting in the very last time in which we need to make deliverables. Please, in order to don't kill yourself in the process, start checking metrics and KPIs as soon as possible. This will actually help you not only to survive to the deliverables, but also to improve the activities and knowing what is actually working the best. Again, something that I have seen during my last year working on these activities is that many times communication activities are being done by people who is not really a communication or dissemination expert, but maybe by engineers. They don't have the experience or the ability or the time even or the resources to do so. So it's actually quite good if you end up looking for professionals, even though they may not be really knowing the innovation and the technical side of all of this, but they will actually definitely help you to get better results. A bit of a hint, use both fonts, because well, it helps to make people focusing what is important. And again, and it's something that I always try to stress, be kind and be close, because the only way of getting closer to others in order to build this trust we have mentioned before is, well, being nice. I have seen situations in which people were not really nice, or people in which they were actually trying to command to peers. And well, this is actually a guarantee of failure. And maybe you succeed in one single activity, but in the long run, it will for sure guarantee the failure of the project. Things that we find or I have found in projects that actually hamper the development of these schemes. Again, there are full work packages of activities in communication, dissemination, outreach, and so on. And many times project managers does not really give the value of it. Please put some stress on there, because commission puts a lot of effort. They give money to people in order to show that they are actually giving money for that. So that's really important. Again, in the same line, not having enough budget for that. Again, intermittency or lack of clarification. Then coming to innovation development, people may have IP issues or not having the product ready. Well, for that, you have to find a minimum viable threshold of information that you could actually share and start sharing. It doesn't matter if you don't have it ready, but please don't wait until you have it fully finished, because this may not happen in the long term, and this will hamper the communication during the length of the project. Again, choose the right channels. Don't be too demanding to partners, because there is no triggers in order to force people to do anything in this scheme. So, well, try to make it from a collaboration of schemes, and don't be so hard on yourself if you commit mistakes, because it's actually a learning process. Finally, because I'm a bit over the time, the three main messages that I would like to put forward today is that please be conscious and reflect on how you communicate and disseminate things. It's actually, everyone speaks, everyone talks, but it's not the same as effectively build a relationship and build trust and create relationship with different stakeholders. Again, there is no magic formula, so allocate resources, try things, fail, and if you fail, do it better in the future, and build trust in many colors, because it's actually the only way of succeed in the long term. That's it. If you have questions, please let us know.
All right, so then in this case, I will give a few words about Carlos. So Carlos is CEO and co-founder of Fuvex. And Fuvex is a startup whose mission is to replace manned helicopters with long-range drones in power line inspection and other aerial data capture operations. So even from Marta's presentation to Juan's, now we get to this actual practical topic of drones. So Carlos, we're looking forward to hear what you have to say. And Carlos will share how not to bore to death your audience while talking about robotics. So let's hear Carlos. I give the word to you.
Hi everyone, thank you Natasha, and thank you for the organization for inviting us. So let me share the screen this time for good. So one of the biggest issues in my experience, in our experience, is that this is a very complicated topic, robotics, and one of the main enemies we have is inside is boring people to death, and that's I have to be very clear on that. For example, last week we were pitching in an European contest 30 companies, and at the we were like the 26 maybe, and it was like pitching to a wall. They were bored out of their mind after hearing 30 companies and 26 companies speaking almost the same, very technical stuff, very non-relatable stuff. We don't. Most of us, and this is not the most usual context, but most of us are not related to maintenance, to robotics, and it's very difficult to share with them this knowledge. So that's why one of the main aspects I want to share with you is our lessons, our strategies, very short and very brief. But the first one is to communicate with intent. So when you are going to communicate with someone, what is your intention? Is to raise awareness, to raise investment, to get clients? What is the main goal of that? And that's very good about being an entrepreneur, is that you get very good at synthesizing and to understand what is the end goal of things. The end goal of a presentation, for example, in my world, is not to have the contract with a client, not to have the investment. It's just to raise interest, so they ask you before after the meeting. So that is one of the main things that I want to share with you, is to have the intent. Because as I was speaking before, the issue with this is that, sorry, yeah. So these are very complex things. It's a complex subject. The problem to solve is not relatable to everyone. For example, pitching in contests against people who are curing cancer or curing diabetes, the people get instantly related with that issue. But in terms of robotics, you have to explain the problems, you have to explain how the whole system, you have to explain the business model, so nothing is obvious. And if you go to the part of explaining everything with all the details, the result is going to be like this. So everyone in the room is going to be sleeping. No one is going to take care of your solution. Nobody is going to hear what you are going to say. It doesn't matter if your solution is the best in the world. If the people doesn't get it, if the message doesn't get it across the board, it doesn't make sense to do the communication. So at the end of the day, you are losing both your time, both the people who is listening. So and I want to be very clear on that. The responsibility of the communication is not on the other side; it's in the one who is delivering the message. So in this case, it's myself, or it could be you if you are providing this kind of presentations. So the objective of the first objective of these presentations, at least in my opinion, is to grab the attention of the people you have across. So you have to be very focused on fundamental. Very focused on fundamental messages that are relatable for the people that is across the board. So the methodology we use is that to make it relevant to the target audience, first we lay out the strengths of the solution, every possible strengths we are thinking we can think about. Then focus on the relevant ones to the target audience. And again, it's not the same if you are talking about for investors, clients, or general public. And then elaborate a claim to guide the message. For example, in our case, is to replace crew helicopters for long-range drones, because instantly we have the attention of the people who we want, is mostly clients or investors. They kind of understand that, hey, crew helicopters are very expensive, so these guys maybe have a solution that is interesting. So this is the methodology we use. It's simple, but as far as we are using, is kind of effective. Then it's very important to to take into account that less is more, especially in this world. So if you talk about every little detail of the solution, you are going to lose attention. And the goal here is to make it as short and simple as possible. So don't worry about leaving the key aspect behind. You are not fighting against other people. You are fighting against the cell phone, and we all have like 20 notifications per minute. So you have to be very concise, to be very effective on that, and really making things simple and grabbing the attention and get the people thinking about asking you later. That is the end goal, I think, of everything of this. In our opinion, is the best solution. So in terms of choosing the channel, and Juan was speaking before about this issue, is that the target audience is the goal of here. It's not vanity. So I have many examples in my environment of people who were doing things not because it was good for the business. It was just because it feels great. It feels great to be an entrepreneur and having lots of followers. Even though these followers are not your target audience, they are not going to matter in your life, and you are just wasting a lot of resources in something that at the end of the day it just matters to your ego. That it's okay, and if you think that is important, it's good to you, but at least you have that in mind and be very clear about that. So vanity is not a strategy. Again, about the tactics, I would say that the specific tactics we use in terms of communication, in terms of pitching, is one idea per slide. So then trying to mix everything in one slide and have a lot of things in the same slide. 7 text lines per slide maximum. The font size and type has to be readable. Go here and write in Chinese. Use something very, very clear and very, just clear. And a presentation that is highly visual. So use photos, videos whenever it's possible. So with that in mind, we have been in the business pitch for almost 7 years. And again, in 3 minutes, when you start in this world, it's like, wow, this is, I cannot say anything in 3 minutes, but with synthesizing, you have more than enough to raise interest. And again, this is the goal in my environment. I don't say that this for everyone, but again, is raise interest is the most important thing in every communication, because otherwise we are in a information-rich environment, and if we don't have the attention, we don't have anything else. So my template, and I learned it from Actua UPM, that this is the Technical University template, Technical University of Madrid template, and it has been working greatly for this time. Is first you explain the problem, then you explain the solution, then you explain the teams, and then financials or milestones. So just to provide you with the example, and so this is our pitch. So we automate the data value chain with long-range drones. So the question I want to give you is how many power lines are there in Europe, and there are over 5 million kilometers. So right now in 2022, we are still inspecting these power lines with people on foot that doesn't capture any digital data, but they are cheap, so they are being used in the medium voltage grid, or through helicopters that are expensive. You capture digital data, but again, they are very expensive, they have personal risk, and they have emissions. So if you are thinking right now about drones, you would be wrong, because drones are legally limited to fly a maximum range of 500 meters, and consequently, they are even more expensive than helicopters. That means that they are only rarely used. So in this world that we are always speaking about artificial intelligence, about how it's going to change everything in inspection and maintenance, how can we implement artificial intelligence if at the end of the day, almost 3/4 of the grid are not digitized? So that's what we are doing. We are automating the digitization of power lines, increasing the range of the drones. It allows us to do the operation for a fraction of the cost with no personal risk and no emissions. So the team is composed by 19 team members and growing. We have received several prizes. We have we are a spin-off of the Public University of Navarre. We have PhD, professor in tech. In management and business, we have MBAs. We have executive of multinational corporations. And about what we have done is we have achieved the only Spanish authorization to inspect power lines with long-range drones. We have raised 2 million euros. We have been certified with the ISO 901, and we have 3 patents. And thank you very much for your time. And well, that's my pitch. So again, very brief, just raise interest and leave them with thinking about you, not thinking hey, when is going this guy to leave the room. So that's my goal, and I'm happy to hear your questions. Thanks. Thank
you, Carlos. So I will take this as an end of your presentation, not just end of your pitch, because we had the best practice example of how to pitch a company in this workshop, which is fantastic. So we could hear it live here. Thank you. Okay, so I will now invite also Marta and Juan to join this discussion. So I believe we will be able to see each other on the screen. Also, we heard a little bit from Juan at the beginning of his presentation on this crisis communication, and also there was a slide with this bridge falling. And I think we had also a question in the chat in relation to this. So maybe I can look to it, and Juan, maybe you can just say a few words about it. So just give me one moment. So yeah, it was Anna's question on how difficult it is to fix communication and regain trust, since you really spoke a bit more on this trust side, gone wrong, and how to deal with negative feedback, especially on social networks in this digital realm. And also, Marta, I invite you to join in on this question, because it's also a part of the topic.
Yes, well, what I said mostly is that, well, all crises end up passing by. We have heard today or yesterday that there was a massive shooting in Texas. Even these sort of super critical things end up passing unhappily. And the thing is how quick you can cut the noise about it, because the more you hear about that, the bigger the damage. So even though it happens in real life environments, and as in a scheme like this, in activity like this, and a question could go wrong, and something could be misunderstood or whatsoever, or maybe you have a inspection and maintenance crisis. My advice is to be as transparent as possible. Well, guys, we got a problem. We acknowledge that this is happening. This is how we will fix it, and that's it. This way, even though people keep repeating the message, this repetition from others may be seen from other stakeholders as excessive or bad intention, or this actually, the question is already solved. So that would not allow people to repeat over and over again. Again, it's actually better to say that I don't know something but we will figure out and we'll get back to you, rather than commit yourself to a solution that may or may not happen. And so you will end up by cutting the noise today, you will have it tomorrow again and louder. So well, if there is a mistake on the side of the organization, well, we are not perfect. We are humans, even though artificial intelligence is made by humans. So well, anything can fail. We acknowledge the failure. This is how we will fix it, and we'll do better next time. Meaning that we cannot guarantee in the future even 100% success. For that, my advice also internally in organizations is put some time and some effort beforehand when the crisis arrives to reflect on how would you react, and get just a piece of paper with bullets or who is the legitimate voice that should speak, because many times there are conflicted messages just by not assigning one person to this crisis response. What would be the channel? Maybe a press release or an open discussion, or just a presentation a physical presentation, reflect on it, and what would be the messages put forward, what consequences would have this crisis. This way you would save some time, so you will be able to react sooner, and you will be able to cut it ideally in an express time.
Yeah, if I can also add to Juan's and the question that Anna had there, is that also we need to accept that there will be always different opinions on topics. So you will always have somebody that may disagree with you. And when it comes to social media, sometimes you need to, just keep doing and not be so much affected, because there are some things that we could not change that much, but you make sure that your message is consistent, and the other things will fade, as also Juan was mentioned, like at some point will fade. And in our specific case, we basically were risking the location of our project. So, and I think it was a lot of the time it was, and the moment it has a lot to do with, and also in our consortium, there were some military institutions too, which also makes stronger certain perceptions when it was completely civilian. And in that case, we arrived to the point that we had to, a coordinator that it just turned out to be a person that also it's roboethics, quite well known and giving advice present also to the UK. He went there. We had to make this town hall, let's say, in the council, and approach the citizens of the villages, because we end up having people doing some demos, and just convincing them, hey, what you have in your mind is not, we are not that. And it worked. At some point it worked. We also decided to do a specific later on program on outreach activities, in which they could also see, for example, firefighters with robots. So then if you see a person that you trust related with something that you seem not to trust that much, but they are happy with that, by association, you will also tend to gain trust. It's another way of doing things. So I think the crisis, as Juan was saying, it's reacting fast, not to make it bigger, but it's something that it doesn't matter how much you want to prepare it. There will be, at some point, you will need to run and take a decision, and let's see how it works, So yeah, with experience, but I think, and what I would say is, like, you can avoid some topics by this previous work of always being communicative and have a message. So there's not so much space for either fake news or misunderstandings. Mm-hmm. And also at some point also to accept that, there's people nowadays that think that the earth is flat. We cannot do anything much about that. You may be doing a lot of comms, but there will be people that will have different opinions, and you need to simply, like, okay, respect, and let's move on to the next.
Thank you. I just have one question, since we have in this area of inspection and maintenance and communication, we heard Marta, you and Juan discussing this from practicality side, discussing crisis, discussing some kind of change of perception, which is already set in this not the best tone. And then from Carlos, we heard a bit more on this side of investor, pitching. But I have a question to all three of you. Is it the case that in inspection and maintenance, most communication happens to combat this kind of crisis, or is there a bit room somewhere else to just simply communicate about this area of robotics and educate people to really show what are the impacts, the positive impacts of robotics on the society in this area in particular? How can a robot actually help people to not put themselves in dangerous situations because a robot can do some kind of inspection and maintenance which people would do? So do we have these campaigns? How big they are, or is it just this kind of need with crisis? Because this is kind of what we noticed. So I'm very happy to hear what you have to say from your experience.
Okay, well, I'll open. Then I think inspection maintenance as a sector has been there for many years, but it's something that even without the robots, it was not much of interest of some people. So it's very, very specific. So here it's about the message. Do you want citizens to know about it, or you want your end users, or in that case, whoever is going to invest on you, to what is the message? It's true that now with this new technology that reduces, as also Carlos was saying, costs. And how the complexity of now this technology and the process itself has changed. Before, as Juan was Carlos was saying, you sent people. It was people doing that job. So and now you are people normally that works there will understand, and you need to make them know that, okay, this technology will help. You may have to deal with people being afraid of what happens with my job if this takes my position, but also you can make them understand maybe it's just a help for you to do this. You may be able to do other things and move it to another area more interesting for you. But that is, I think that is also the message that now it's important for inspection and maintenance, like a shortage of a skilled worker that we will have. That's why it was me putting the gender thing. I've been in construction and inspection and things, and it's still more mainly. So there will be a shortage of people, and you need to attract workers, people that will do those works, and you need to open that also and make it, I think, also portray it in a way that this is not only a man's job. Yes. Other people can also do it, and in my personal opinion, I think bringing robotics in that field, it will be, I think, more attractive also for some female, because then you don't, you can just make another part of process. So I think a good thing, but there is a message that needs to be there, like educational message, that is something that it's interesting, and it's also like the thing, as Juan was saying, is like if the things are well done, you don't notice. And that is sometimes a problem, but we need to explain we are doing these things, so we are keeping you safe, and we are also for companies like reducing cost and hazards.
Well, on my side, we need to understand that mass media has a logic at the moment, which is the most noisy event is the one who would actually be there. So inevitably, we will only hear about inspection and maintenance in big news when an accident happens. Then different topic is robotics. Robotics, we are in a moment in which we are redefining work relations in the world. We have this massive resigning in the US and the European Union. We are also having wage problems all over the world because people is not really working by the wage they were used to get before. And with robots, now we have this problem that does robot kill jobs, or jobs are killed by something else, and robots are just an excuse for that. And we are in a battle of communication in which everyone is trying to put forward the messages, and we are in the middle of it. So it's time for like 5-10 years, see how it goes, and we see. But at the moment, the situation is we're in the middle of the conflict, and it's super difficult to say how it will be developed.
Thank you. Thank you, Juan. Carlos, do you have something to add?
So in our case, we don't have a lot of experience. We fly under the radar, and we are pretty focused on this sector that is really industrial. You have to know, you have to meet 10 people, and you meet most of the industry. At least, for example, in power lines, in Spain there are like 4 power line companies, and most in Europe are the same. So this is the market we are focused. And other than that, investors, and there's a question over that. They are very difficult to get involved in this world, but and more communication would be useful for to get them attracted. But we are very small, and we have to be very focused on the target. And the target here is clients, and we hope that with a real client, a real application in the world, everything is easier. It's easier to discuss how we improve power lines with a real use case to convince that to the people that this is important. For example, we are working in a post-storm emergency inspection. So when storms come and power lines get damaged, and areas of 10,000 people get without power in winter. This is an extraordinary example of what a drone could do. That is locate very easily and very fastly where these damages are. But things we have to do it before we tell it, and once we tell it, that we can, with that use case and with the leveraging the communication network of the end client, that they have a lot of interest to communicate that they are good for the society. That's so a start day.
Thank you. This is I think you already answered my next question I had, and this is taking into account the limited resources for communication campaigns in general. How do you prioritize your target audience? You know, whether you target policymakers communicating about certain legal aspects and changes in inspection and maintenance, or you target citizens, or in your case, Carlos, I think you made it quite clear what your target audience is. But yeah, question to Marta and Juan, and please add if you have something. So how do you prioritize who you communicate to about this topic?
One caveat I would like to add is that regulators in the aerospace sector is clients and regulators are the big two in our sector, and we focus all the time in that.
Together with what Carlos said, I guess the main public or citizens, even though it would be ideally, it's very hard for us to reach them because we don't have that much high-profile news to put forward. So then you have to develop targeted activities. And as Carlos said, regulators and public authorities are the, at least on the European trade side, is the most important one, to let them know that the money that are actually given to us is actually being well used in the targets that they actually established. And then, clients and the market, how to put these innovations develop closer to people that may actually purchase it. But I guess sustainability is a challenge for all European projects because, let's say, Tier 1 innovations are not being developed in European projects. For that, there is actually another rhythm of innovation in the markets by super big companies. And here, even though they are super useful and they will end up being the ones that are more used or most used, we would have a problem. Well, there is a problem reaching markets, clients, and customers.
Yeah. I can add that as experience, like working in part of communications in the European projects in FP7, Horizon 2020. An FP7 budget for communication was something non-existent. Like, remember, for 3 years we have 10,000 euros. Like, if you have work in communication publicity, that was like, okay, well, and then to announce 6 events. So you have a very small budget, and of course, if somebody gives you the money, in this case it was public money, there are some expectations of you to do certain things. So sometimes that will be your priorities. You know, you need to do this. That means that it's this audience. You will prioritize your money. You will try to associate with other projects to kind of push up the budget. You may try to also get sponsors. And of course, the framework on project doesn't allow you to have investors because you have a main one, which is the commission. And it makes a little bit more complicated to run a communication campaign or communication strategy like you could do if you were a private company. Then when you do it as a fully public funded project with some more strict framework and less flexible, then you know, when you are also, for example, if you are completely government, then you will have a different, you have your office, a communication office. But I think it's for European projects or SMEs that have to deal with also with this funding, public funding that sometimes comes with open source or open science, and they expect you also to communicate to certain audience, and at the same time having to deal with these investors or sustainability of your customers. It really at some point you with a low budget you really need to juggle, and you really to make sure you are targeting the right one and maybe sacrifice some other. It's not because you want it and you do it deliberately. That is because you don't have enough resources to attain all this. And I think somehow I know a little bit about Horizon Europe on kind of doing proposals. It's still more, has become better now. There is more part of the European Commission to understand that it's important for some specific projects, not all, to have, if you want really to communicate in a big scale and reach, you know, specific audiences, and not only European, but also international, there needs to be some money there. You cannot pretend the same results as a company that has freedom how to use the budget, and there are different techniques of marketing you can use. Then, you know, with a very okay, it's very, very strict framework and very small. So you cannot have these expectations. They need to be matched. So I think if, let's say, public institutions want us to have very, very competitive as a project results and communication as the private market, it needs to give that budget and freedom of flexibility. If you want the same results constantly, you may be lucky, you know, but in some others not. I could explain the example. We were comparing that time our competition with the DARPA Robotics challenge, you know, and we were expected to have the same results and in the media and so on. And you only look at the budget. We had 3 million for the 3 years whole project of everything. Only one of their Atlas robot was already $1.8 million, and it's only one. So basically, if you look at their thing without looking at their campaign, we were talking about $100 million. So how do you want me to do the same results? Well, if I do, I would really get, please hire me now, you know. But it's also the perspective when you receive funding money from the, in this case, the commission, just to be realistic on what, as a project, you can provide back. Because sometimes it really creates a little bit of anxiety. You know? It's what do you want from me? I know what you want, but I cannot give it to you. And it's difficult to make them understand, no? Because there is a context there, a frame there that you cannot change by now. So, yeah. So that has been, it has improved, but I think it still needs improve a little bit.
Something
more.
that.
Yeah, that is my my challenge there that I leave to our policymakers and
something to think about after this workshop.
Mm.
I believe we are now getting closer to the end of our workshop, so I really want to thank all of you for your time and your presentations. We have a few minutes left to end with the final survey, but we would reach out to you after this workshop, so you were able to connect among each other as well, and hopefully to, you know, start thinking about these very important topics. Like from Juan, you know, just be nice and build trust, to Carlos's point of pitching or exercising your elevator pitch, and then of course Marta's last question, I think just something to think about, how to position strategically and think about these perceptions. Okay, so I thank you one more time. Let's now launch the final survey. It's just one question. It will take a few moments, just so that we are able to understand how successful we were with providing some of these topics in inspection and maintenance to you. So please vote if you feel like this has helped your understanding of the communication issues in robotics in this area. If it was new to me, if it significantly helped, didn't help at all, also I think is a very good feedback for us. So please be transparent. And yes, I will give you a few minutes to answer before we close down the survey and close down this session. I see most participants voted significantly, and a few saw that this topic was new. So hopefully it helped to address some of those initial topics which we asked at the very beginning. What do you expect from this workshop? So even if it's learning something new, then I think we have done quite a good job. So yeah, maybe a few more minutes, Jovita, and then you can close their survey for the final words, and that's it. Significantly. Okay, good. I think this is what we were achieving and what we were aiming to achieve with this workshop. So one more time, I would like to thank all of you for participation, especially to our speakers. Thank you for joining us and sharing your experiences. If you would like to find out more about the project and activities, you can find it on the website, and see you in some of the future events, hopefully.
See you guys.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.